am so ready for spring. Here in New England, we've gotten a lot of snow this winter season. Temperatures have been incredibly cold. Just earlier this week, it was 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was incredible. Although we are back to 30-degree weather, it is spring in my heart. So in honor of springtime being just around the corner, I would like to share 5 books that I have on my Spring TBR for this season. Welcome to my channel. My name is Holly. If you're new here, I am a therapist who loves reading. I enjoy getting lost in books that are very character-driven and introspective. On my channel, I talk about what I'm reading across genres of literary fiction, horror, thrillers, memoirs, nonfiction, classics, any books that I find a little introspective or psychologically interesting. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel. You can also follow me on Goodreads. It is linked in the description box below. You can follow what I'm currently reading over there, as well as all of the books that I have on my TBR. I'm pretty good about keeping it up to date. I found it a little bit tricky to select books from my TBR that gave me springtime vibes. For some reason, I'm better about identifying summertime books or fall or winter, but for some reason, spring just doesn't seem to have a very distinct vibe for me in terms of what types of books I like to read. So I'll explain to you why I chose each of the books that I'll be discussing in this video. I've organized this list of springtime books by genre, and we will start off with literary fiction. The first book is Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. I've heard a lot about Melissa Broder. I know she's known for writing sort of weird, strange girl stories. This story follows a 24-year-old woman named Rachel who lives in LA. She has built her life around food restriction, calorie restriction. So clearly there's some trigger warning here for eating disorder content. Her therapist suggests that she take a break, a 90-day break from having any contact with her mother. Apparently her mother is a pretty big influence in her disordered eating. So she does this, and during this time, Rachel meets this woman named Miriam who works at a frozen yogurt stand. And as she's getting to know Miriam, Miriam just demonstrates this joyous love for food, and Rachel's story evolves and things start to change for her. I do believe this is a sapphic story. I'm not 100% sure. It kind of seems like maybe it might go in that direction, like there's something erotic maybe happens between them. I'm not sure. I chose this book for springtime for a couple of reasons. The first one is just the title, Milk Fed. I guess when I think of the springtime season, I think of like baby animals and newness and farming and countryside landscapes. This is obviously an urban setting, but just the fact that it had milk in the title kind of just said, hey, that's good enough for me. But also my other reason for choosing this book is because it does focus on disordered eating and body image. I think the springtime in particular, the algorithm really pushes for get your summer body ready, starting on diets and getting into shape. And there's a lot of focus, especially for women, on shrinking their bodies and watching what they eat. It's really just everywhere. As a therapist, one of the areas of specialty that I do focus on in my work with clients is disordered eating and body image. So it's something I feel passionate about. I'm curious to read a book that explores these themes through the story, just to see what Melissa has to say about all of this. And by the way, if you're somebody who is struggling in this area, obviously seek out a therapist if you're able to, but there are some great books that explore these themes as well. I'll just rattle off a few and I'll link everything in the description box. Anti-Diet by Christy is great. You Just Need to Lose Weight by Aubrey is also another great one. And Good Food, Bad Diet by Abby Langer. Those are all books that cover disordered eating and body image issues and are amazing, very comprehensive, lots to learn there. So feel free to check those out as well. Next, we have 3 Days in June by Ann Tyler. I could have sworn that I have read another book by Ann Tyler. I don't know if it's just because she's a very prolific author. I feel like I see her name everywhere. Or maybe I owned some books by her at one point. I can't confirm that I've actually read anything else by her, but this one has caught my attention. This book focuses on a family gathering for a wedding, and the story takes place over the course of 3 days. As these relatives reunite, there's some long-held tensions that come to the surface here. There's emotional complexity to this story. Family secrets are starting to be uncovered. I have heard Ann Tyler's known for writing very character-driven stories that focuses on family dynamics, so I do think this sounds like something that would be right for me and fits my reading interests. Also, in the springtime, it's wedding season. We're here. I have 3 weddings to attend just in the spring and summer this year. Within a 12-month span, actually, I would have attended 5 weddings this year, so probably the most I've ever attended. So weddings are on the mind for me, and I think that a story that takes place at a wedding, especially one in June, sounds very appropriate for spring. Sometimes June for me feels a little bit more like entering summertime territory, but half the month is still technically spring. So 3 Days in June by Ann Tyler. The next couple of books fall under the horror category. We have The Lamb by Lucy Rose. In this story, we're following Margot, a young girl. She lives with her mother in isolation in a countryside setting. She and her mother are cannibals. Her mother lures strangers to their home and they consume them. Things become a little bit more mysterious and strange when one of the strays that they lure to the home starts to develop a relationship with the mother. Like maybe the mom and this woman start to develop some sort of mother-daughter dynamic or some sort of affection. And so that starts to complicate the dynamics between them. I think that this story technically falls under like folklore or folktale horror, which to me is the type of horror to read during the springtime. It's also supposed to be a little bit more of a literary type of horror story. So those are the types of horror books that I tend to like and that are very character focused and maybe have a slower pace. It's a little bit less about the gore and the scare and more about how these horrific themes impact people and humanity. I think this book has a lot to say about female appetite and identity. So I've heard really good things about this one. And just the fact that the title is The Lamb, I don't know. I think of, again, baby animals in the springtime. So for me, this is a springtime book. The next book is The Hounding by Xenobe Purvis. This is a Gothic historical novel taking place in 18th century English countryside. It's about 5 sisters who are being accused by the people in their village of turning into dogs. This story is supposed to be a blend of The Crucible and The Virgin Suicides. Both stories I have enjoyed. I haven't read either of them, but I've watched the movies. So this book does sound like something that intrigues me. The themes here are, the dangers of gossip and rumors, misogyny, toxic masculinity, when females dare to be different, what can happen on a community level to them. The atmosphere and the setting of this book obviously does make me think of springtime, but the cover, just look at the cover. You have these dogs in a grassy field. Gives me a springtime feel. Also, the dogs in this cover look a lot like my dog. I have a Whippet. His name is Sterling. They're not very common dogs, so whenever I see images of a Greyhound or a Whippet, I just get a little excited. Okay, and the last genre I have here is a literary satire, speculative fiction, Yesteryear by Caro Burke. This book comes out in April, I believe. This story follows Natalie. She's a social media influencer who promotes a trad wife lifestyle on her platform, complete with homemade bread and farm animals and this picture-perfect rural family lifestyle. She wakes up one day and finds herself trapped in an early 19th century time period where the image and the lifestyle she was promoting on her social media platform is now her actual reality, just minus the modern conveniences and internet access and all of that. So this story is supposed to be a satire, a commentary on probably the trad wife movement and how you see this trend of idealizing the past and what that really means, maybe about our culture at this time, and maybe the dangers of idealizing a time frame in history that maybe isn't so picture perfect. So it's supposed to be darkly funny. In general, I find the trad wife content and movement happening right now like really interesting. For a while there, my YouTube algorithm, I think, thought I was a trad wife just because I do make my own homemade sourdough bread. For some reason, it's just like started sending me all this content of these different trad wife content creators, and some of what they're putting out there is really interesting. A lot of DIY, learning to do things yourself, whether it's like sewing or mending something or having like a homestead, living off your land to some degree. I do find that really interesting, but it seems to also come with a mindset, political beliefs, religious beliefs that seem to all get woven into all of that. So I just find it really interesting, and I'm curious to see where this book goes with this idea. That covers the 5 books that I have on my springtime TBR. We've got some literary fiction, some horror, a satire. I would really love to hear what you're planning to read for spring, or if you have any suggestions for me based on the types of books that I tend to enjoy and find interesting. Thank you for being here. I hope your next read is one that stays with you, and I will see you in my next video.